I really don't know what to say about this show. Maybe I should just give up, or I don't know. I have such a really bad headache after watching this anime. Well, anyway, this is Wandaba style. Wandaba Style is an extremely weird anime about a group of girls called Mixed Juice who join forces with an eccentric scientist named Dr. Tsukumo. The group will try just about anything they can to make the first rock concert on the moon in a last-ditched effort to make their name famous. And boy howdy do I torture myself by reviewing this anime for your sick and twisted pleasure. Let's take a look. So our story starts with a Nabashin wannabe named Michael Hanagata heading towards an unnamed studio executive's office in order to pitch his new idol group called Mixed Juice, in which the executive seems not very thrilled to see him. Meanwhile, and quite literally the very same minute, we cut to a 12-year-old boy named Susumu Tsukumo. Tsukumo, apparently a conspiracy nut, believes that NASA never made it to the moon, and it was all filmed in a sound studio, and is determined to make the first true lunar landing. Oh no, not this again. Do you morons seriously believe that the moon landing was done in a film studio despite all the evidence that proves otherwise? In between Dr. Tsukumo's rants, we are introduced to our four heroines, the members of Mixed Juice. Himawari Natsuwa, Yuri Fuyude, Ayame Akimo, and Sakura Haruno? Yeah, you wish. Trust me, this Sakura Haruno is not like the one you know from Naruto. This one can get extremely irritating. We then see Dr. Tsukumo as he prepares to launch his android assistant, Kiku No. 8, into space using a giant slingshot. Let's play a little game. Let's see how many blatant scientific implausibilities you can spot in this scene. Ready? Go! Inconsistency number 1. Modern rockets that go into space do not use fossil fuels. They use a mixture of compressed liquid hydrogen and oxygen, which is essentially the chemical compounds of water. Granted, there are some rockets that use various other chemical compounds. Second, is this kid really that stupid believing that you can get into space via, of all things, a giant slingshot? If the Mythbusters can't even launch a crash test dummy over the US-Mexico border with a giant slingshot, what makes you think you can get into space with one? Well, anyway, in his quest to reach the moon, he uses absurdly overblown and scientifically impossible ways to get to the moon without the use of fossil fuels, and to no one's surprise, fails each time. Oh, this kid makes Wile E. Coyote look like freaking Einstein. Meanwhile, the girls head toward their first concert on a makeshift stadium on the roof of a shopping complex. It turns out their manager could only afford to borrow one microphone, so they are going to have to share it. And if there's one thing that these girls really don't know how to do, it's sharing.
We're Mixed Juice! You know, I don't think this show is suitable for children.
I don't think this show is suitable for anybody.
And now we know exactly what kind of audience this show is made for. And you should all be ashamed of yourselves! Michael Hanagata, however, seems to have a backup plan, as he has made a deal with Dr. Tsukumo to help him get to the moon, effectively making the girls guinea pigs for the Doctor's crazy experiments. And these characters. Oh boy, these characters. Character-wise, there really isn't much more to say about Dr. Tsukumo than what has already been said. He may be a genius, but his mental age is still somewhere around a 5-year-old's. His main reason for going to the moon was to prove that he can do well on his own to his overprotective mother, who he ends up getting involved in a space race with her. And let me tell you, this bitch makes Cinderella's stepmother look like freaking Mother Teresa. Then there's Michael Hanagata. He is the sleazy and somewhat perverted manager for the girls who will do anything for a quick buck or make the girls come out on top of the charts, whichever comes first. Despite being unnecessarily loud and extremely selfish, he really does care for the girls and does anything he can to make sure the girls succeed, even if he does often end up with the short end of the stick. And when I mean by often, I mean all the freaking time. Then there's Kiku number 8. I really didn't care much for this character. The only thing she's ever really good at is being a freaking fan service magnet, and looking like she's somewhere around the age of 10 really doesn't help. And between you and me, I'm really starting to get sick of making pedophile jokes all the time. When she is not attracting unwanted underage fan service, she usually aids Dr. Tsukumo with his bizarre experiments, which usually leave her showing her undies or nearly nothing at all. Honestly, I feel so dirty after seeing that, and I don't think a shower is going to cut it. Does anybody have a giant tank of hydrogen peroxide? Finally, we have the members of Mixed Juice, in which, for the interest of time, I will group all 4 characters together. Most of the time, they unwillingly serve as guinea pigs for Dr. Tsukumo, although they will support him and give him encouragement from time to time. Isn't that the beginning signs of Stockholm Syndrome? Each of them has their own individual aspirations for becoming a pop idol, and therefore they don't get along with each other very well and argue with each other. They all have their bizarre habits, but I find Akimo Ayame the most eccentric of the bunch. Basically, she's some hippie chick who claims she can see fairies that look an awful lot like they belong in those homoerotic Choaniki series of games.
My fairies! Ah! All my fairies missed getting like one! Open up! We've got to open the ship! Open it! Please open the door! Open it! Oh, we can't do that. The door's locked on latch. Keep trying, fairies! Just a little farther!
Oh boy, do I have a lot to say about questionable content in this show. Let's get one thing straight. This show has a lot of underage fan service. Basically, you will encounter crude humor and nudity involving minors quite a few times in this show. I wouldn't have minded it as much when I was around 15 years old or so, but now that I am 27, this show makes me feel dirty in more ways than one. Thus, I will give both nudity and crude humor 3 stars for both intensity and quantity. Mild profanity is occasionally used, and used mostly in a lighthearted sense, so I will give this 2 stars for both categories. Violence is also occasionally used, but is used more in a form of slapstick humor, like your typical Tom and Jerry cartoon. So I will give this 1 star for intensity and 2 stars for quantity. So, what do I honestly think about this show? Oh, I'll tell you what I think about this show. I found this anime to be perplexing in more ways than one. First off, this show is about both the music industry and space exploration, but the 2 genres do not fit together very well. The anime has a very difficult time trying to decide which of the 2 genres it wants to use. Please pick one or the other and stick with it. Oh, and did I mention that this anime is boring? First off, the humor in this show is largely hit or miss. At times, it can be funny or clever, but most of the time the jokes are either juvenile and senseless, or involve the main character's clothes coming off in any way, shape, or form.
Ugh, the stuff they're getting away with on kids' shows these days.
The show pretty much tries to duplicate the style and humor of both Excel Saga and Azumanga Daioh, but fails miserably to live up to any of those shows. At least Excel Saga and Azumanga Daioh were funny. This, on the other hand... do I really have to ask? On top of that, the show literally spins its wheels for a major chunk of the show's run. It is nothing but 6 to 7 episodes of the characters trying to find ways to get to the moon, prepare to take off, the mission fails, Kiku's panties are shown. Wash, rinse, and repeat. The plot finally starts to pick up once Dr. Tsukumo's mother is thrown into the mix, and it suddenly becomes a fast-paced race to get to the moon first. But by this time, I have lost all interest in this show. Oh, how tempting it was to give up and just move on. But I persevered, possibly at the cost of my own sanity. Bottom line, this show's story really fails to live up to its potential. There are a few scenes that I found funny, but I was overall disappointed on how this turned out. I was expecting something more along the lines of K-On! In space, but all we get is a rather slow and somewhat stupid story about some kid going to the moon in a giant bottle of Pepsi!
Oh, God.
Oh, Namandabu, Namandabu, please, Namandabu. May your sweet, sweet souls rest in peace. Namandabu, Namandabu.
Thus, I will give this anime 2 out of 5 stars for story. The soundtrack really isn't much either. After watching the rather generic opening and ending themes a couple of times, I just skipped them for the rest of the show. Also, despite a star-studded cast of voice actresses the likes of Tiffany Grant, Monica Rial, Lucy Christian, and Kira Vincent Davis among others, the fact that the characters spend so much time fighting and their high-pitched bickering makes them sound something more like this. Yeah. What a genuine waste of talent. Oh, and that irritating Wandaba, Wandaba, Wandaba music that plays every time the characters embark on a mission. Just trust me on this one. Anybody within earshot of this song is going to try to kill themselves. So with that, I will give soundtrack a 2 out of 5 stars. The animation doesn't have much to write home about either. The character designs are cute, the attention to detail is pretty average, and the colors are very bright like a cartoon from the 1970s. However, the animation is rather subpar, with sometimes sloppy animation and very noticeable jagged lines. I played this on multiple televisions to make sure it wasn't just my computer, and the problem reared its ugly head every time I put the disc in. Thus, I will give animation a 3 out of 5. The characters range from tolerable at best to extremely irritating depending on their moods. One of the things I hate about these characters is that they are way too loud. I mean, wow, almost every single one of these characters spends up to 90% of their screen time shouting at the top of their lungs. It gets really annoying really fast. I mean, I didn't exactly like it in Excel Saga either, but then again, it is Excel Saga. One other problem is that the characters don't develop very much over the course of the show and consist of various other stereotypes that you find in other anime. Despite an all-star voice cast, the characters are bland and forgettable. Thus, I will give characters a 2 out of 10. Now I know why people give up reviewing this anime after watching the first 4 episodes or so. It's boring, it's uninspired, it's childish, and it's boring. It's not horribly bad, but it just doesn't live up to expectations, and by the halfway mark, you'll honestly not have even one expectation left. It's just one of those shows you see once and then forget it ever exists. If you're looking for an anime about a group of girls getting together to start their own rock band, go watch K-On! K-On! is 100 times better than this drivel schlock. That is why I give Wandaba Style 2 points for interest and an overall rating of 4 out of 10. Now, excuse me, I think I need to go and find my sedative. This is the American Anime Otaku, signing out.